things website in our time frame.
Meeting is now streaming live onto Facebook. It'll take a little while to replicate until we can see that. Jacqui Owen and I are just having a joke about all things website and what a huge claim that is. But if anyone can pull that off in half an hour, it is definitely Jacqui. So thank you, Jacqui, very much for being my guest. We are talking today with Jacqui Owen, who is a website developer. She's well known within the Joyful Business Club because a number of the people on there are people she has built websites for. I am working with her on developing a more complex website where I'm developing it, but she's giving me a lot of advice, and I know she knows her stuff because she's giving me great advice with that. So, Jacqui, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Serena, for having me. And it's a joy. It's a joy to support people going into business and putting themselves out there. And I love the way you've taken on the task. But as you know, there's so many little details in doing this that it can end up being very complex and overwhelming.
Exactly. Now, I'm having a few connectivity issues, which I think are my end, but if anyone is listening, you know, my apologies that this is not perfect, but you definitely, a website seems to almost be essential for business these days. How essential is having a website?
You're asking a web developer.
Yes.
I think it's essential. I honestly do think it's essential. It's the one space online that you can control. In saying that, I do think you need to be very clear about why you want a website. You know, is it a brochure site? Well, we'll probably go into that a bit deeper. But yes, I would say it is essential.
It is essential. Look, I would agree with you there. And, you know, I guess, you know, you and I both network. We've both met in a services, you know, organisation, and, you know, we both do a lot of similar sorts of networking. And of course, when you meet someone and you're at networking, what's the first thing you do after they give you a business card? You go home, you think they're quite interesting. What do you do?
Look them up.
You look them up.
And if they've got their email address at a domain name, like at owen.id.au, I go to that website as well, www.owen.id.au.
Exactly. And, you know, it's not the only thing you do. Like, you know, for me, I'm often checking them out on Instagram or Facebook. I'm also checking them out on their LinkedIn profile. But, you know, if they haven't got a website, you often sort of say, well, why don't they have a website? You know, like you know, are they real? Are they not real? Like,
absolutely. Isn't that interesting, Serena? That's my perception. And I think it's a widely held perception, but it's, you know, it's a platform where you tell the world about you, but we give it such credibility, which I love, and I think businesses really should take advantage of.
Well, it's like, you know, it's like your business card to the world, pretty much. And, you know, you mightn't think anyone looks at it, but they do.
Absolutely. So I wasn't really going to cover metrics in this talk, but, you know, when you look at how many visitors you have, it can be quite a surprise sometimes.
It can be a surprise. And I'm always really surprised the amount of people who go to the About page on my website. And when I think about it, that's where I often go to on a website. So I've met this person, I've met, you know, heard about this company. Yeah, so what? But like, who are they? Who founded it? Why did they found it? Like, how legit are they? So I think that's what I'm searching for in this day of so much fake news. Like, I'm searching for, with a website, that sense of legitimacy to learn something about them, about their credibility.
And that you're connecting with a real person. You and I deal with a lot of small business, so with generally people, but even with companies, you want to know their values. You want to know what they're doing in the world.
Yeah, I hear you, all of those things. You want to know, can I trust this person if I'm going to do business with them? If I buy from them, are they going to deliver their product? Are they going to scam me? All those sorts of questions.
Yes, and the About page is really important. Yeah, there's a few strategies for the About page. Like, it's not about your business, it's about you. Well, I guess if it is your business, it's about your business, but it's a little bit of depth behind the scenes, but still from what's in it for the customer, which is exactly what you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to acknowledge we've got a few people online who have said hi. So hi to Kim Williams, hi to Chrysia Keefe, and hi to Rachel Torrielbar. I don't think I've quite got your surname right. My apologies. So just wanted to acknowledge some of the people online.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Well, I guess where do you start with the website, since we've established that they're essential? Well, your first thing is your domain name. And I won't go too much into this because you, Serena, did a great live on domain names earlier. So there are lots of registrars. Again, it's buyer beware. Make sure you're buying from a reputable registrar, because a lot of them won't let you move your domain, or they'll charge you like $2 to register it the first year, but the year after that it's $100. Do you know?
Wow.
So you do need to be careful. GoDaddy's a good one. Personally, I recommend GoDaddy for domain names, but I won't recommend their hosting, for example.
Well, I was surprised you even recommended them for domain names, to be honest.
Crazy domains. And domain names all over the world are regulated differently. And so when you register a .com, the registrar actually buys it for 10 years. They might then rent it to you for a year or 3 years, whatever, but they own that domain name for 10 years. Well, you own the use of it, but they own it for 10 years. They can move it all around the world. You can move it all around the world. If you let it lapse, they'll sell it to someone else, but they control that domain name for 10 years. If you're an Australian, I highly recommend getting a .com.au. This is a really regulated space. It's regulated by Melbourne IT down in Melbourne. They are a huge player that most people don't know about because they do not want to deal directly with the public. But they control the .com.au domain space. So to have a .com.au or any .au, a .org.au, a .biz.au, a .net.au, you have to be a registered entity. So anyone can set up a .com, and I think most of us have probably come across a few scam sites on .coms. That can't happen with a
Exactly.
.com.au, or it's very unlikely to happen with a .com.au. And a .com.au has to be either directly related to your business name or directly related to a service that you offer. .com.au's, because they are regulated, like .co.uk, tend to be very, very trusted, which again helps with your SEO. So get the .com, but get the .com.au as well.
Well, this is really fascinating because I remember going to ProBlogger and other blogging conferences, and talking about this issue with other bloggers. And a couple of years ago, the accepted kind of thing was go for a .com over a .com.au, because that shows you're global. You're not just the Australian market, you're global. But when I think about it, when I'm looking at companies to buy from, I'm usually more impressed with it's a .com.au, because I immediately know that they're Australian. Now, I didn't know about this added aspect of having to prove that you are actually a business and to go through that criteria. But when I think about it, when I am looking to buy something particularly or have a financial transaction, I am usually prefer a .com.au. But like I said, for many years, the conventional wisdom for bloggers and others in the digital space was go for a .com.
Because they're easy to get, and as you said, that global aspect. So get the .com as well. One thing which you have touched on previously is if you search for a .com and it's available, buy it immediately, because people are monitoring those searches and they'll buy it. So I had a girlfriend just pay thousands of dollars for a domain name because someone had bought it and parked it.
And especially before you register, get an ABN in a particular name and particularly register the trading name with ASIC, because I have registered some trading names recently and then also trademarked them. The moment that happened, I got all this spam mail from different companies offering to sell me domain names that were similar to the name that I had for quite a lot more money. So, $100, $150, a whole range of different things. Now, I had already got the .com and in one case a .club in the names that I wanted, but they had gone out and purchased similar names. So if I had waited until I had registered my business name and then thought, okay, now let's do a website, I would have had to pay a lot more money.
Absolutely. And I know I'm working on my own site at the moment, a classic car mechanic. Other people's websites are great. Mine is still in progress. As I searched on a business name I'm interested in, went back 2 minutes later and it wasn't available.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So yes, for that .com space, act fast. And you also mentioned there a .club, and that
a .club, yeah.
Very cool. And there are all those now. There's .canberra, there's .tv, whatever. .tv is a funny one because it's actually Tuvalu, but of course in our culture, TV.
That is an interesting one.
But there are lots and lots of different, there's .network now as well. So there are lots of different options.
.life was an interesting one. I was looking at that and thinking, it could be like how to live a good life, which it is, but it's often remembering someone who's passed away.
Gosh, isn't the internet wonderful, the way it connects us with those things?
It is, exactly. So, but yes, the hot tip here is if you have a good name for a website, register the URL. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I had this idea for the Joyful Fashionista, and I was literally meditating. I was like, thinking to my mind, I've got too much on already. I don't have time for this, but my intuition said do it. So I immediately went and registered that URL because I didn't want to, wait the day or two later and then find it was gone. So the moment you have that idea, that inspired intuition, just do it. It's a relatively small cost. Like it's going to cost you less than going out to lunch with your friends, but it will give you the security of having that name.
And you don't have to do anything with it. You could just register it. It can sit there for as long as it takes you to get ready and get going.
It's like playing Monopoly. You see an opportunity to buy the property, you buy
it. That's all right. And so you've got your domain. What do you do? Well, then I guess you need a hosting environment, but really you need to have an idea about what you want that domain to do for you first. What do you want that website to do? Because that will influence some of these decisions. So if you just want a brochure site, or maybe a site with a mailing list and a contact form, you can pretty much go to any of the mainstream hosters. But if you are doing an Amazon.com, well, you're looking at a very different infrastructure then, So, and I don't play in that space. That is huge and very complicated at the back end. So like, for example, with the Sydney Olympics in 2000, they had 26 servers. Their site was on 26 servers, so that if you hit one as a visitor and it wasn't available, you'd go to the next one, the next one, the next one. So there was no downtime. So Amazon would have similar back-end infrastructure.
Well, yeah, because they sell their cloud services. So, they have a lot of infrastructure to support that. They're world leaders in that space.
Absolutely. And expensive. So I guess if you're paying what you value for, most people here will not need an Amazon cloud service.
Well, as a blogger in my previous life, I didn't even need a mailing list, right? So I'm just, wanted something where I could write articles and press send. With time, I always thought that I'd eventually have banners for advertisers and stuff, but I never really got around to that. And so, for a long time, I could get away with a free WordPress site because that's all I was doing is just sharing my thoughts with the world.
On WordPress.com, which is great. Nothing is free. Maybe WordPress.com actually is free because it's set up
used to
by
be.
So when I say that, like Wix, free to sign up, but anything you add on to Wix makes it more expensive. Even just adding your domain name makes it more expensive than, say, a shared hosting environment. But also the terms and conditions, you give them access to all of your data and all of your images, which, is pretty valuable in this day and age.
And also too, like with the free WordPress, I had a WordPress.com, so I paid to get the domain name, but it was running otherwise through the free WordPress. But of course, they monetize it through advertisements. So sometimes you get advertisements on that didn't necessarily fit your values. My first value, site was in Taiwan. So it was called Taiwan Shifu. It was about, being married to someone who's Taiwanese. My ex-husband's Taiwanese. We were living in Taiwan. I was on posting at lots of restaurants and other things. From time to time, you'd get escort services with Asian women popping up because, it's popping up with all these, Taiwan women kind of sites on the website. So you get those kind of ads. Are you prepared to wear that, or is this something that is really going to not sit well with you? Is it worth you paying to host it yourself so you don't have that happen?
I would always say yes, but there might be instances where that's the best way forward. There are a lot of shared hostings around. Unfortunately, the ones in Australia have all been gobbled up by the big ones, even while they're trading in their own name. So 10 years ago, I sold an internet service provider, and at that time, internet service providers did web hosting and web development as well as internet service providers. There were thousands of us, and now there's about 4. Really?
Wow.
They've all been gobbled up, but they, still trade under their name, so you may not be aware of that. So I've just recently come across a fantastic company, Queensland-based, where I ring up, a person answers the phone, a person who's Australian and who can answer my question on the spot. They're brilliant. So I now offer my own hosting, which I'm very happy to share with people. I can manage back end for you. You can manage the front end, you can manage the back end. I'm not trying to make it mysterious, but there's a lot of detail as you're finding out on your journey, Serena. So
there's a lot of detail in my new venture, which is basically a classifieds website. There's a lot of detail there.
There's a heap of detail. So, and are you allowed to upload to the server? What size files are you uploading? What size images? How many connections can you have at once? Is it running the right version of PHP? So there are some really good web hosts that I'm thinking of one in Canberra, but it's a kind of security versus accessibility issue. Some servers are tied up so tight that basically people can't visit them or you can't do anything with them. And they tend to be targeting, secure information services mainly. So you're looking, I'm saying come to me because I just got so frustrated. I found some great global ones. SiteGround has a great reputation at the moment, and I do have a few customers on them, and I'm happy. I was really happy with Bluehost. All of a sudden, they've become really, really slow. They're heavily advertising at the moment because people are leaving them in droves. And I haven't seen an improvement in their service.
I used to use Bluehost, and it did my head in because you had to go onto their sort of server, which had all this other sort of stuff, and do a lot of things in the back end with that. And like I said, as a blogger, my core business was writing. I didn't want to be spending all this time working out how my self-hosted server worked. As far as I was concerned, I was paying them to do that. I didn't want to have to do that, and it just got really, really annoying.
Hearing you. So that's shared hosting. And as a web designer rather than developer, I like being able to have that access. So for example, when I was uploading a theme, I didn't know what, it kept failing. I couldn't figure it out. Did a Google search. Oh, maybe I need to upgrade. So with Bluehost, I could then go in the back and just upgrade that straight away, those limits straight away. I didn't have to contact my web host and wait 12 hours or whatever. So, but there are managed solutions where they do it all for you, and they're not significantly more expensive. I am happy to talk to people directly about this. You can drop questions in the chat, or most of you know where to find me on Facebook, or my website does have a contact form on it at Jacqui, Owen.id.au.
And make sure you add those details to the underneath this video on the Facebook Live, so people know where to find you. So just to summarize, you know, one of the key decisions you need to make is whether or not you want to self-host. So in which case you need to find an internet service provider, and that's a service that you provide, and there's a number of other companies that provide that as well. But of course, obviously you want to talk about your offering, and I know you are hosting one of my websites, or particularly if it's more like what you call a brochure site, which is basically just, hello, this is a bit about me. If you want to contact me, here's a form, or it's a blog, you know, whether or not you can, you know, host for free or very cheaply through a platform such as WordPress.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm happy to go through and tick all those variables.
Now, in our last 10 minutes or so, I want to ask you about, you know, a little bit about design. So I'm sure you get this all the time because you're a professional developer, but from time to time people say to me, I need a website, I don't know where to start. And it's pretty clear that, you know, it's a very basic brochure level. And so then I'm like, okay, let's sit down and let's design one together. But of course, it's never that simple, is it?
No, it isn't, particularly that scenario that you've mentioned, which is the people I love working with. So quite often a website is the first time a business has communicated their business as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not only just building a website, it's getting really clear about the way you want to communicate your business. And that often is the biggest journey in building your website.
Because I sat down with a good friend recently because I knew she wanted a website and she'd been putting it off. And I said to her, right, okay, well, what is your business? Like, what are you doing? Like, are you going to be booking things through your website? Are you going to be selling products through your website? Like, what are you going to be doing? And she actually had to think about it for a while. And she sort of went, no, I just want people and they usually say, and I'm sure you hear this, I just want a website.
Yes. People often think the website is the business. Well, you know, if you're doing a directory or a classifieds like you're doing, Serena, it is the business, but generally it's not. It's a business tool. So if you're clear about what you want it to do, that makes it easy for the developer. So things you need to build the website, clear idea about what you want from it, and that will also determine what metrics you put in place to measure. Your branding.
Branding. Yes, that's pretty key, isn't it?
Images, fonts, and then things like developing the site so that the search engines pick it up. So hosting's important in that. The speed, where it's hosted in the world. So an Australian host is good from that point of view. We're a trusted source. But also things like you should only have one heading 1 on your website anywhere. All the rest of your page titles should be heading 2s, for example.
I didn't know that.
See, if you want that fancy little Google thing where it comes up with your website and then it has about contact, that's how you do it. One of the things people get overwhelmed is, and we know this through networking as well, is you want to communicate everything in 10 seconds. You can't do that. Make your website simple and easy and give enough information to attract the people you want, get people you don't want to self-screen out, and encourage them to contact you, go to your Facebook page, go somewhere else for more information. It's kind of a little teaser. The simpler it is for people to absorb information, the more likely they are to act.
I hear you. Early blogs were very blingy, like literally they'd have, sidebars and footers and headers with lots of, sign up here and pop-ups and lots of stuff and, lots and lots of content and lots of different colors. And I think most modern people now, we've got so much information. You just have system overload when you go to a website like this.
Absolutely. And that's another male-female difference. Generally, men's vision is small, their field of vision is narrower than generally women's. So they like flashy things, whereas it distracts us. And colors are important too. You can go crazy on the depth of all of this. They're not things that should stop you starting though, but generally it's women buying things. We generally, particularly if we're parents, are time poor. You just want to be able to get in, get the information, act, you want it to work.
Yep.
And go. Yes.
That's key, isn't it? Because sometimes you just want to buy something, you just want to sign up to something, you just want to read something, and it's like, I don't have time to friggin', play around to try and find it on a website. You want it to be obvious for you. You want it to be clear.
Absolutely. So when you're designing your website, branding, I really encourage my customers, you designing the site, to use your own words. Because of that about thing we were talking about, we want to connect with you. Your values will come through. Your way of thinking about your business will come through in your words. So branding, what you want out of your business, your words, and that's it. Now that sounds really simple, but it can take a long time to get to that.
Yeah, well, like I said, when I sat down with my friend, what I thought was going to be a half an hour chat ended up being a lot longer. Because once again, it was like, well, what are you doing? How do you describe your business? And even just like I said before, most people seem to say, I just want a website. But I'm like, well, what websites have you looked at recently? What websites resonate with you? And one thing I often do is search like WordPress themes for a particular topic. Like, if it's a restaurant, you can go, okay, WordPress themes for restaurants, and you can have a look at some of the recently developed themes that you could purchase and think about, well, what are the features that you like? What are the features that you want? Look at websites you use. Like, I like the way they display this menu. I like the way they display, this ability to book online. I like the ability to do this. I like the way they've got the picture on the front page, or I don't like this. And then it's a bit like, designing a wedding where you look at all different wedding dresses and before you get to your ideal dress, you've started to think about and narrow down the style that you want. Then it makes
Absolutely.
it a lot easier.
And that's really important for SEO as well. When you do a search and you see what comes up related to. So that's another conversation, but thanks for bringing up WordPress themes. So I do tend to recommend WordPress. So WordPress is now 40% of the website market. So that's kind of your website back end. And then you put a theme on top of it.
Hey, Laura.
Now, as you know, Serena, there are, I would say, millions of themes out there now.
There are.
But there's a learning curve with every theme, and there's limitations with every theme. There are ways around this. So you can use Elementor, which is a page builder, or Divi, which is my preference. Then, if you're doing multiple websites, you don't have to learn lots of different themes. You can create whatever you want in those themes, and they've both got whizzy, what you see is what you get options. There's another there's a trade-off though. So that makes it really easy for the end user to update and look after and maintain themselves, but it does make them a little bit slower. There's a new builder out that's called Oxygen, and it writes a lot cleaner code, but it's not intuitive for the end user to update themselves. So that's another thing to consider. How often will you be updating? Do you want someone to do updates for you? Do you want to be able to do them yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And how comfortable are you to learn coding? So there seems to be this mystery around coding. I don't describe myself as a coder, but you know from time to time that when you want to embed something, they'll give you code and then you embed it. And there's YouTube tutorials on how to put that particular code in. mean, my 11-year-old's taught himself how to code for Roblox. So, this is, a younger generation are often quite familiar with this. But, one of the best tips you've given me is to search for
those
the
minerals. So
channels that explain some of these codes.
Work is out of central
Absolutely.
business.
And Google is wonderful. And the community, I have to say, is absolutely wonderful. And particularly the open source community. Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me, Andrew. Excuse me, husband. The other thing I'd like to say is also make sure your website is mobile responsive, because
oh, that's so important.
Yeah, in our country now, in Australia, over 50% of people access websites on their mobiles. In other countries, it's really high, a lot higher, particularly when they don't have the cable infrastructure that we do. I tend to look on my mobile. I prefer to buy on my laptop so that, because I've been caught in sales funnel that I can't get out of on my mobile, whereas you can on your, yes.
Case in point, Kingsley's Chicken. Anyway, I'm tempted to roll out their slogan, but I'm sure a lot of people can complete that for me. So we were doing our shopping on a Friday night, heading out to my in-laws out at Rossai, which is 45 minutes west of here, and east. East.
Towards the coast. Yep.
Towards the coast. Thank you. Directionally challenge. And we were sitting in the car park and we purchased something online. And that's fine. And we drove out to Queensland, to Queanbeyan en route to pick up the Kingsley's Chicken. And we get it there and realise it's gone to Woden and have to drive back to Woden. And I know I was a bit stressed at the time. So it was like a very simple takeaway en route to visit the in-laws. A very rare unhealthy treat ended up being this hour-long journey. But, you can laugh at that. But that's the reality. Sometimes when you buy things on mobile, it's just a bit quirky.
I ended up paying $300 US for a permaculture course, which I ended up doing, but had never intended on buying.
Yeah, so those things can be really good. So, and how can you check that something's mobile responsive, like before you purchase a theme or before you think of a theme?
Well, if you're purchasing a theme, it should tell you in the details. But what you can do is look up other sites that are using that theme.
Oh, that's a good trick.
And you can, so there's a website, what theme is that, which will identify WordPress themes. You just put in the URL of the site you want to look up, or Dealt With will tell you exactly what a website is already. So the other thing you can do is you can minimize your browser. You can play around with your actual browser size and see what it will look like on a tablet, on a phone, and how it will do it.
200 and 400.
So if you click the things, the square in the top right corner, you can resize your browser and check that out. That's the other thing with development. Like a website can look different in every browser, so that's something to be aware of when you're building.
Yeah, it is definitely. And just because you've got NBN and good internet speed doesn't mean that everyone else does who's looking at your website. I'm very resistant, for instance, to put videos onto the front. And I know there's a trend now where a lot of themes will support you having a video playing on the front. But I'm still like, no, I'm not going to do that, because I don't know if someone's got their kids and husband home, working from home at the same time, and everyone's on the computer. It drives me nuts when I can't upload things.
And it also slows down your page too.
Yeah.
So put it, and speed pages, speed tests are always done on the front page.
So thank you very much for sharing those insights. Make sure you share your details in the chat about how people can contact you. And if you've got any other website questions, make sure to follow up in this chat with Jacqui as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Serena. And look, it is a big topic. So yeah, we couldn't cover it all in half an hour.
No, but you covered a lot, I think, to get people started and thinking already.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So what are their suppliers? 6. Yeah, that's okay.